couple interesting things to talk about from today's Chicago Marathon. Mainly, Nike showed that it doesn't always take the lightest shoe to win the race or the world record. Kiptum had an incredible weekend. If you watched any of the press interviews leading up to today's race, he was composed, he was confident, he was saying that he wasn't going for a world record, but he looked very confident, he looked very composed. And when he lined up on the starting line, he also looked very determined. And the way he ran the race was in control literally from the start. There was really no question with him at any point in the race. What was interesting from a super shoe standpoint is that he was in the Alphafly 3s. We haven't seen him in anything really other than Vaporfly 2s. Granted, that's only been one other race, but you know, some of the other press photos that have come out, he's always only been in Vaporfly 2s. So he was in Alphafly 3s. Really interesting. In fact, most of the top Nike athletes were in Alphafly 3s. There again, just like Berlin, were very few Vaporflies really anywhere in the race. There were some Pacers in Vaporfly 3s, a couple Pacers in Vaporfly 2s, but for the most part, most Nike athletes were in Alphafly 3s, which I found quite interesting. On the women's side, Hassan, she had a great race too. I was not surprised to see her in Alphafly 3s. We've seen her in training photos. We've seen her in that shoe before. What was a surprise to me, though, on the women's side was third place, Alemu. She was in Vaporfly 2s, and we had previously seen her in Vaporfly 3s. So it's interesting that there's still a mix of shoes, but it really does feel like Nike is pushing the Alphafly 3 as their marquee marathon shoe. And this is also where it got really interesting on the men's side. Conor Mantz and Galen Rupp were both in Alphaflys. Not 2s, not 3, Alphaflys. Galen was basically in the OG black and green Alphafly 1s, and Conor was in one of the, I believe the Olympic colorway, or one of the colorways around that period. But they were both in Alphafly 1s. I'm kind of shocked that both of them were allowed to race in that shoe. Galen being Galen Rupp, I mean, you would expect him to be in the top of the line current Nike shoe, especially because he's been part of the development of the Alphafly with Eliud Kipchoge, but he was in the OG Alphafly. And then Conor Mantz, likely being the fastest American that was going to be there, not lining up in the newest shoe. It's not the best look for Nike. So I'm really curious what was going on there. It sort of tells me that Galen Rupp is sort of on his own program now. Yes, he's still a Nike runner, but I don't think Nike's really supporting him the way they were. He's just doing his own thing. Conor Mantz is a bit more of a unknown to me because it seems like he is sort of the up-and-coming fast American marathoner. And I'm really surprised that Nike didn't kit him out in the latest stuff or give him the opportunity to train in the latest stuff. So really interesting there. I'm curious where that one develops. There were a lot of Adidas Adios Pro Evo 1s at the race. There were a bunch of Pacers. I would say the majority of Adidas athletes were in the Evo 1s. Kipruto, second place in the Evo 1s, but it was a very low-key day for Adidas. I don't think they put a lot behind Chicago. I think they put all their eggs in the Berlin basket, and they got what they got at Berlin. So interesting. Asics, on the other hand, I think third place on the men's side. I'm going to guess that is a prototype Sky Plus, like we saw in Berlin. So that's interesting that it's still up there. And in fact, I think third and fourth on the men's side were both Asics runners. So really interesting there. I think it's going to be clear that that shoe's coming out in the spring. So we'll actually see what that shoe's all about then too. But right now it's getting great results. Like I said, I think it's interesting that there is a range of Nike runners running in a range of Nike shoes across multiple generations. The top end obvious favorites for podiums, world records, whatever it is, are getting the latest, greatest. And then all the other athletes are either getting what they got or they're being allowed to run in whatever they want to run in, which is honestly kind of new because we haven't seen this mix of Nike shoes on athletes in some time. I don't think it's down to, oh, the Vaporfly 3 isn't a good shoe or the Alphafly 3 is not a good shoe. I think a lot of these athletes probably have just trained a lot in these shoes and it's just what they're used to. A lot of these elite athletes don't like to change gear, not only at the last minute, but just at any point. They really don't want to change stuff. So I wouldn't read too much into this. I think the biggest takeaway here is that the Alphafly 3 is going to be Nike's marquee marathon shoe, and they're going to put a lot behind it from not only a marketing standpoint, but athletes. We're going to see a ton of athletes next spring in the spring 2024 marathon season lining up in those shoes as we see a wider release of the Alphafly 3. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you like this type of content, consider subscribing. You'll see more content like this pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.